Sometimes you come across a public transport system that looks amazingly well constructed, although it was expensive. Mostly separated from traffic, well used, and it provides connections to major destinations in the city. Utrecht has such a tram system, or rather a light rail. And especially with the extension to the football stadium, university campus and hospital that was opened in 2019. But they decided not to operate trams on this extension during the weekend. Anyways, there is much more to the system, so let's dive in. The modern-day tram system in Utrecht opened in December 1983. This connection was needed to link the newly formed town of Nieuwegein, established in the early 1970s as part of the Groeikernen program. This program was meant to steer the growth of the large cities in the Netherlands to designated areas, rather than having uncontrolled sprawl. This also required a higher capacity public transport mode, and for the connection to Nieuwegein, various options were on the table, from mainline rail to a trolleybus. Eventually, a fast tram was chosen as a preferred method, and the line was built by the Dutch Railways, who never operated the line themselves. The line had, from day one, two branches on the southern side of Nieuwegein. Already in 1985, the western branch received its extension to IJsselstein, a town to the west of Nieuwegein. In 2000, the western portion of this tram system was completed, with the extension to IJsselstein Zuid. This modern tram system was not the first time Utrecht had a tram system. Before the Second World War, the city used to have trams as well, before they were replaced by buses. There used to be 5 lines, but also various interurban trams as well. The last interurban tram ended its operation in 1949. Back to the current tram system, a lot of developments have happened relatively recently. In 2013, the line was cut back temporarily to allow for the massive reconstruction and expansion of Utrecht Central Station. This station is the busiest in the Netherlands, due to its very central location in the country. For the trams, this meant that they had their terminus on the western side of the station, instead of on the eastern side, where you can find the city center. This cut led to lower ridership for a while, but well, it was worth the wait. And that wait led to a superb train station, as well as an extension of the tram system. This extension, called Uithofflijn, was desperately needed to provide a much better link to the university campus and a large hospital. The bi-articulated buses that connected the campus before were simply not sufficient to cope with the demand. The Uithofflijn was opened in December 2019, but this was nearly 1.5 years after the planned opening date, due to a variety of issues. Besides the delays, the cost overruns were massive. It eventually led to a title that no project ever wants to receive: the most expensive tram line in Europe. This project also required adjustments to the existing line, as the trams would become low floor, instead of the high floor trams operated previously on the route. So all the platforms, as well as the depot, needed to be adapted to low floor trams. Which brings us to the network of today. This is the tram system of Utrecht, or rather, the light rail system of Utrecht. It is around 28.4 kilometers long and uses a gauge of 1435 millimeters. The network is electrified by means of 750 volts DC overhead wires. There are 2 depots on the network, but the depot in Nieuwegein is the main one, whereas the smaller depot behind the Science Park Park and Ride terminus is more for storage. Let's now take a look at the lines. We start with line 20, which runs between Nieuwegein Zuid and Park and Ride Science Park. Line 20 is around 21.2 kilometers long and has 24 stops. Line 21 runs between IJsselstein Zuid and Park and Ride Science Park. It is 25.5 kilometers long and has 28 stops. It shares tracks with line 20 from the stop Nieuwegein City. Line 22 runs only between Utrecht Central Station and the Park and Ride Science Park. It is around 8 kilometers long and has 9 stops. Important to note is that it only serves the tram stop on the city center side of Utrecht Central Station. The tram stop there has 2 stop tracks. Every line runs every 15 minutes during weekdays, providing an attractive 8 trams per hour per direction on the section between Nieuwegein City and Utrecht Central Station, and an even more attractive 12 trams per hour per direction from Utrecht Central Station to the Park and Ride Science Park. To align with the neat 5-minute interval on the section Utrecht Central Station Science Park, the trams coming from Nieuwegein and IJsselstein tend to wait for a bit at Utrecht Central Station. This looks amazing, but the biggest flaw, in my opinion, is the non-existent service during weekends between Utrecht Central Station and Science Park. Not even at a lower frequency, but no service at all. And that despite there being some important destinations along this section as well. Okay, the university campus will be quieter, but the major hospital won't, and the park and ride could definitely be used on the weekends as well. For the stadium of FC Utrecht, there are now matchday services. But in the past, this was not even there. So they went out of their way to build this rather expensive tram infrastructure, only to not even really use it during weekends. I still can get my head around it. This video about the tram system of Utrecht is part of an already 57 episode long series of videos of transport systems. I would love to show you many more in the future. Therefore, it would be really helpful if you like my video and subscribe to my channel. Let's now take a look at the tram fleet. Utrecht uses trams from the magnificent CAF Urbos 100 family. These trams are fully low floor and are 2.65 meters wide. The CAF Urbos for Utrecht are bidirectional and come in a 33 meter long variant of 5 sections and a 41.2 meter long variant of 7 sections. In normal operations, a 5 and a 7 section tram are coupled to provide the necessary capacity. There are 27 5 section and 27 7 section Urbos 100 trams in Utrecht. Besides the current tram fleet, it is also very interesting to see which trams operated in Utrecht before. Be prepared to be surprised. For many years, the mainstay of the tram system was the custom-made tram type that was nicknamed Swiss trams. They received this nickname because their manufacturer was the Swiss company SIG. These trams were high-floor 2-section trams, closely modeled after the B-type of Duwag, which can be seen on various Stadtbahns in Germany, as well as on Istanbul's line T4. And then, a very interesting event occurred in 2008. As a result of the growth of passengers and a need for the Swiss trams to receive an overhaul, Utrecht purchased second-hand trams from Vienna. Of course, Vienna has a mostly unidirectional tram fleet, but the trams that came to Utrecht were from the C6 type, with additional E6 cars. These trams served on what is now line U6 in Vienna, and these trams are therefore bidirectional. However, the start of service in Utrecht was not smooth. The trams needed to be adapted to the conditions of the network in Utrecht, like the high platforms, but also the switches. The trams ended up only being used in peak hours. In 2014, they ended their service and then continued their life in Krakow. Let's now take a look at the ridership. In 2024, the trams in Utrecht transported at least 10.8 million passengers, which is close to 30,000 passengers per day. This is quite a good figure for a tram system that is best described as a single line with branching in Nieuwegein and IJsselstein. It is also important to consider the fact that the whole section of the network is not in use during the weekend. The ridership in 2025 is likely already quite a bit higher, as trams were more regularly operated in the weekend during major events, such as football matches of FC Utrecht, or events at the university campus. Let's now take a look at the future. There is a big plan for a new section of the light rail, which has received the name Merwedelijn. This new section will connect a new development area, called Groot Merwede, to the system. Interestingly, the debate of how this line should be built was quite interesting. Various variants were on the table, with a bore tunnel as the most extreme. Eventually, the debate seemed to settle on a cut and cover tunnel, but that isn't going to happen either. Instead, the line is going to be built in a trench, likely in a somewhat similar fashion as the rebuilt tramline to Amstelveen and Uithoorn, on the tram system of Amsterdam. Funding is already secured, but the final variant is still to be confirmed by the municipalities of Utrecht and Nieuwegein. The Merwedelijn is potentially receiving a further extension in a later stage, so it will connect to another new development area called Rijnenburg. However, that extension will require separate funding later on. And then there is the persisting problem, the lacking weekend service between Utrecht Central Station and Park and Ride Science Park. There were talks about having this service as of this year, as there was a change of operator. However, for the time being, it still looks like it will be operated for events rather than regularly. And that's it for this video about the tram system of Utrecht. Click here to watch my video about the more traditional tram system of Amsterdam. And as always, thank you for watching.